News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali on TV1.
Hello, good evening and a very warm welcome to Newsline. And today we are in London, and our guest today is the High Commissioner of Sri Lanka to the Court of St. James's in London, Saroja Sirisena. Very good evening to you, High Commissioner, and welcome to the program.
Thank you, and good evening to you too.
Thank you very much for agreeing to be on Newsline. We much appreciate that. Could we start by asking you, what is the role of the High Commissioner here in the United Kingdom?
Well, the High Commissioner to the United Kingdom is the head of mission of the High Commission that is based in the United Kingdom, accredited to the Court of St. James's. We look after the welfare of our people to begin with, in addition to promoting bilateral interests with the United Kingdom that spans political, economic, cultural and defence related and all aspects of bilateral relations.
In a post-Brexit situation where Britain is in the sort of process of making their agreements with all over the place because they've now left Europe, how's Sri Lanka faring in terms of those agreements and so on?
Well, Sri Lanka, as you know, with the European Union had a preferential trading agreement, and since Britain is perhaps the largest part of our trading with the EU, was the largest part, and remains the second single largest export destination for Sri Lankan products, launched its own preferential scheme, which is called the Developing Countries Trading Scheme, the DCTS. And this basically carries all the benefits that we had with the European Union for our products, approximately 7,000 products, to enter the UK on the same basis.
And Britain is the second largest trading partner for Sri Lanka.
Export destination.
After the US, is
Yes.
it? And so how has it been? Are you satisfied that you've got the necessary benefits for Sri Lankan exporters here?
Well, Sri Lanka is in a category of 65 countries which are lower middle income countries, which actually benefit from this scheme. There are various categories of benefits, and there are certain elements that we need to resolve, especially for the apparel industry, because the double transformation, the rules of origin, the cumulative rules of origin, these are very technical issues, but we are in the process of trying to find solutions for them, because there are different categories of countries which receive perhaps even deeper benefits. For example, the least developed countries have a trading scheme which have more beneficial trading arrangements than Sri Lanka, being a lower middle income country. But these are WTO regulations, but we need to find further avenues that we could accommodate Sri Lanka's unique situation, which is not having a very large industrial base. We are a net importer of most of our raw material into our most important export industry. So there are negotiations underway. We recently, in April, we had the inaugural strategic dialogue with the United Kingdom, which discussed all of these issues, including political defense-related cooperation. And
have you found any particularly sort of worrisome or challenging negotiations when you compare it with what you had during when we were not out of when Britain wasn't out of the European community?
Well, I think for Sri Lanka, Brexit has had its advantages. Apart from trade and the fact that we are now talking to a single market, a single country, whilst having a very deep, old cultural connection with this country, and I think that's important. We are a known brand in this country, and it has also created opportunities in terms of skilled employment. In January 2022, we signed a memorandum of understanding with the UK for sustainable recruitment of healthcare workers. So sustainable cooperation, which includes recruitment of healthcare workers. So these are new avenues of cooperation. And quite recently, we have been given a certain understanding that our driver's license could be acceptable for exchange in the UK, which would pave the way for Sri Lankans to obtain a British heavy goods vehicle license. Again, trying to help Sri Lankan skilled workers gain gainful employment and skilled employment, which will obviously have higher remittance, and also help the United Kingdom, which is a win-win for both.
Indeed. And how do you assure UK investors that their investments in Sri Lanka are secure, that their brands won't be damaged by whatever happens? Is there some form of agreement between Britain and Sri Lanka to protect investments?
We do have an IPPA, an Investment Promotion Protection Agreement, but aside from that, Britain's investments in Sri Lanka are hundreds of years old, at least, some of them. And most of those companies, corporations have benefited from investing in Sri Lanka, and they continue to expand either in terms of employment or what they have invested in the quantum of investment. And we have also some very good stories, even in the apparel industry. We have investors that have been in Sri Lanka for decades through all the difficult times and have continued to remain in Sri Lanka. And what they say is it is the can-do attitude of Sri Lankans. And that is pleasing to them.
And this can-do attitude, how has it translated itself into within a context where Sri Lanka has very challenging times at the moment in terms of foreign exchange reserves and so on. So whilst we appreciate the fact that there are companies here from Britain in Sri Lanka for over several decades old, how does one increase that amount and make the governor of the central bank pretty happy than he is?
Well, again, the unfortunate global recession is not conducive to ready investments, but we have to pursue investments in new areas and in particularly in areas where we have an advantage. And I think the fintech industry, offshore operations, we have been successful, fairly successful in attracting such kind, which is we play to our advantages for having very good quality trained human resources. And this is, I think, one of our key strengths, in addition to the location, having good infrastructure and both logistical and physical infrastructure and good services sector. So these are our advantages, and these are the new areas, because post-pandemic we saw a different kind of investment and a different kind of work ethic. So Sri Lanka is ready to take advantage of that new space.
And High Commissioner, what about interest in Sri Lanka's port city project? How is that? Is it making any headway here in Britain?
Yes, I think so. There was certain perhaps lack of understanding of the nature of the project, and now the port city has become a member of the Commonwealth Investment Enterprise Council, CWEIC, and they are members of that, which helps them gain another platform to attract investments. And in addition to what we do on the bilateral front, the Commonwealth is another area where we, as a founding member, play an important role. During the coronation of King Charles III, the Commonwealth leaders met the King prior to the coronation, and it was actually an initiative of President Wickremesinghe, who suggested, when all the leaders were present, that they should have an opportunity to meet the new head of the Commonwealth and have his direction discussed with the Commonwealth leaders.
Excellent. What about obviously your time? We will viewers will recall your time in India, based in Mumbai,
Yes.
dealing with trade. How much of that sort of experience has helped you here in Britain, our second largest export market?
Well, I think a great deal, because Mumbai, I think, is one of the most vibrant cities in the in Sri Lanka's immediate region, the South Asian region, and it is also an important trading hub, a logistics hub, and Colombo and Mumbai have very close affinities. So it's important that there is a large business community which also has links to the United Kingdom. So there is a great deal of connectivity between these assignments.
And High Commissioner, what about tourism? This is our next big market, really.
Yes.
And what's happening with tourism here, and how are you tackling increasing tourism from Britain to Sri Lanka, especially when Britain itself, the people here, are also facing various challenges. The disposable income of the British people is also down. I think they've had 13 mortgage rate increases, and the interest rates are quite high.
Yes.
Not as high as in Sri Lanka, but still those are their challenges. How are you coping with all that?
Well, I'm pleased to say that June we recorded, the United Kingdom has been recorded as the second source of inbound tourism to Sri Lanka, behind India, which is, I think, is very encouraging. And Sri Lanka is a known brand in the UK. It's not a country that we have to introduce to British people, given our shared history and even the current commonalities. Shared love of cricket and tea perhaps brings our communities closer together. And travelling to Sri Lanka is something that British people recall fondly and do repeatedly. I think even when we were going through troubled times, I think there was a degree of volonté on their part to actually help Sri Lanka by visiting. They wanted to know whether they could actually still visit, and would it help the economy. So there is an element of that. And there, in addition to, I think philanthropic tourism is also a great part of post-pandemic travel. And the nature of travel has changed. I know you said about the disposable income, but the nature of travel has changed, and people are less likely to take short, quick travel, and their travels become more meaningful and perhaps even longer term. So I think the pandemic changed the way people traveled, and the importance of the sixth sense, the soul, how travel touches the soul, is also important in today's traveller. So the experience, the authentic experience that Sri Lanka offers, I think is something that people want to return to. They want to experience if they haven't had that before. So it is not just, it's something that they want to do, if they feel it's important to them, and that they benefit, not just as in a travel.
Talking about visiting Sri Lanka and so on, we know that countries like, say, the UAE and Dubai, it literally takes approximately a minute to be granted your entry, especially for British passport holders. They can just walk in, quite literally. What is the case for or against visa-free travel for British people, British passport holders into Sri Lanka?
Well, I don't think visa has ever been an impediment for British people to visit Sri Lanka. And of course it is a source of revenue for the government. And given that we still have to follow a process, and a certain process will cost to implement, and that would obviously mean that we would have an expenditure without revenue if we were to have visa-free travel. So given that it's not an impediment, I would advocate to hold the visa scheme.
We'll discuss this after the short break, in which we take a peek at this evening's headline news from the wonderful primetime news team up here on the third floor in Sri Lanka. And we are, of course, in conversation with High Commissioner Saroja Sirisena in London. We'll see you on the other side of the break.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali on TV1.
President meets the Indian Prime Minister for talks. MOU reached for economic development of projects in the Trincomalee district. LTTE member who was sentenced to 200 years in prison for central bank bombing and another accused granted presidential pardon. Top Chinese Communist Party officials meet former President Mahinda Rajapaksa and opposition leader Sajith Premadasa. Water cannons used to disperse student mock protest. Bacterial pathogen discovered in another anesthetic.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali on TV1.
And welcome back to Newsline. We are in conversation with High Commissioner Saroja Sirisena right here in London, England. And thank you, High Commissioner Sirisena, for being on our program. We much appreciate your presence and that of our production team too. Thank you.
Thank you.
We were talking about the case for visa-free travel. What are the financial? What are the finances looking at? You know, how much does it cost to process a visa, and how much do you collect? What's the trade-off?
Well,
is there a plus point for the country?
I think so. I mean, on average, if we think of calculate a visa at $30 or £30 per head, and we talk about 2 million tourists coming into the country, you do the math. We're talking about serious money for a country like Sri Lanka.
It might just put a smile onto the people in the treasury, I suppose. But
Yeah.
what about, is it inconvenient for a potential traveller?
It is online. It could be improved because there are instances where there have been bogus websites, but this is unfortunately the reality that we live in with the World Wide Web. It has its conveniences and the downside of it. However, having said that, we do advertise, we do on our websites, and we advise people that it's only the government website which is the legitimate website for online visas, and we do that regularly through our social media in order to assist people not to be duped by bogus websites. But I think by and large, there are instances where such people have been duped, but by and large, the system works quite well.
What about passing through the airport? Sometimes we get calls here to our newsroom about the awful experiences that people have in terms of delays and so on. I know, having said that coming into Britain for a non-British passport holder isn't exactly a piece of cake. But in Sri Lanka, they're coming to have a holiday, a long flight from Europe. It doesn't do too well if you have long immigration queues. What does the High Commission? What kind of role does the High Commission have here to try and convey this wider message to immigration in Colombo?
Well, we always do give feedback. We share our views on how we could improve systems because we do get feedback from travellers, and yes, definitely we could make the experience a bit more pleasant. I think with the new developments at the Bandaranaike International Airport, it would be even more convenient for travellers in time to come. We've got a new development and new terminal in the works. So I think also people are, I think people also need some training and further education, but I think on the whole, immigration officials of all countries are not the friendliest. So I think it goes with the territory.
I suppose no interview with a High Commissioner here, especially here in London, is complete without asking about the state of our relationship with the diaspora. How is that subject playing out now?
Well, I am very pleased to say that my experience with the diaspora, with the British Sri Lankan community, has been extremely positive. I consider that the community as perhaps our living brand ambassadors. They are the ones who continue on a daily basis hold our image in this country and in all other countries where we have large communities. And especially in the UK, this is an old community, this is a very well-entrenched community, a law-abiding, tax-paying community, and they have the greatest respect in this country. And their interactions with the High Commission during my tenure has been extremely positive, and some of them have come forward to even sponsor cultural events at the High Commission. And this has been extremely pleasant for us, because what we try to do is to connect second, third generation British Sri Lankans with the country through festivals, through positive experiences, through fun things as well. Because sometimes when you are out here, out in a Western country, parents of a certain generation try to inculcate a little bit parochial, old-fashioned views of the country, and they don't necessarily connect naturally. So what we try to do is to try to introduce the fun elements of festivals so that the British Sri Lankan community, especially those who have been second, third generation, would connect more naturally with the country. And in terms of the associations, the cultural, religious institutions, they are as much in Sri Lanka as they live in Britain. I say always that you can take the Sri Lankan out of Sri Lanka, but never Sri Lanka out of the Sri Lankan's heart.
What about I've had several messages when we let out that we are doing this interview, and especially about the applications for dual nationality. Apparently, from what they say, that it's long and fraught with delay.
Yes, it is a process. It is of course regaining a nationality. It's not a simple process. There are certain checks that we have to undergo in Colombo, certain processes. They could definitely be sped up, but I think resources have to be allocated into this as well as many other areas that of government that we would like better services. But we from the High Commission have tried to streamline this from our side. We have introduced online card payments, which we didn't have before. This year we were able to introduce that credit card payments, and we also started opening our consulate section on Saturdays to make it better for our community, because as I said, they're a hard-working community. They work 5 days, at least 5 days a week, and they don't have to take a day off to come see us. We also did a mobile service in Manchester recently over 2 sessions on a weekend. So my colleagues gave up their weekend to help the community to make things a little bit better.
And High Commissioner, what about the negativity and the poor PR of the past, with claims of all sorts of things, ranging from genocide to war crimes to whatever? It seems to have subsided. Are you confident that this is something that can be addressed in a positive way?
Well, for us, the thing is, the vast majority of Sri Lankans have moved on since the end of the conflict. That is what I see as the High Commission. And also, there are elements of the diaspora who continue to talk on a single issue. And I think on the subject of reconciliation, His Excellency the President has just outlined his proposals with the minority parties, the small and the other parties, especially those representing the provinces of the north and the east. And I think those who want to move forward are moving forward, and those who still wish to be negative and be unhappy but staying where they are. But at the same time, I'd say even a vast majority of those people still travel to Sri Lanka. So they have family and friends in Sri Lanka, and each visit is beyond their expectations in terms of positivity. So I think that needs to be highlighted.
Thank you. Just as we end, and because you have this background in trade and so on, today we heard earlier today that an iconic personality in our tea industry, Mr. Merrill Fernando, the founder of Dilma, passed away at the wonderful age of 92. How many more entrepreneurs like Merrill Fernando would put Sri Lanka on the right road to greater success?
I think I'd like to take this opportunity to present my condolences as well to his family and to appreciate the great work of Merrill J. Fernando, who has obviously inspired generations of entrepreneurs of Sri Lankan origin. And I think there are people who follow in his footsteps, and which is why we launched the Sri Lanka UK Chamber of Commerce in October 2021 to bring our business communities together, especially in London, a city like London, which has a vibrant business community, to enhance the existing trade, which is about $1 billion. So we are working with the entrepreneurs and the established businesses for this.
High Commissioner Saroja Sirisena, thank you very much for having been on Newsline. We much appreciate you. And on behalf of our group, the Capital Maharaja Group, thank you, and we wish you all the very best.
Thank you, Faraz. Thank you for having me.
And that's the way it was on Newsline this evening. It's now time for the primetime news. Not before I say, have a good evening as much as you can. And as always, God bless you all.